Have you ever been in a room filled with tension, knowing something huge is about to happen? That's exactly what the disciples felt that evening at the Last Supper. It was a moment filled with emotion, mystery, and powerful teachings. In Story of Grace, we explore this iconic event, not just as a meal, but as a turning point in history. Jesus, knowing his time had come, shared his final moments with his disciples, preparing them for what would follow. The Last Supper is more than just a meal. It's the culmination of Jesus' mission. Let's take a closer look at this incredible moment, a surprising announcement. Imagine sitting in a room, surrounded by your closest friends, sharing a meal that has been anticipated for weeks. The atmosphere is comfortable, familiar, even joyful. Then, out of nowhere, one of them makes a shocking statement. "One of you will betray me." The moment Jesus uttered these words, everything in the room shifted. It was as though time stood still, and the weight of his announcement hung in the air. The disciples, who had spent years following him, learning from him, and witnessing his miracles, were now faced with the unthinkable. Betrayal? Among them. The room was filled with disbelief, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of fear. Each disciple began to question their own role in this situation, wondering if they could possibly be the one Jesus was speaking about. The tension was palpable. For these men, this moment marked a dramatic shift. Up until this point, they had shared a close, trusting relationship with Jesus. But now, in one devastating sentence, everything they thought they knew about their mission and their teacher seemed uncertain. The prophecy of betrayal was not only unexpected, it was deeply unsettling. Yet despite their shock, Jesus remained calm. He knew that this moment, this betrayal, was essential to the fulfillment of his purpose. He had come into the world to bring salvation, and this act of betrayal was part of the plan that would lead to his ultimate sacrifice. Even as the disciples struggled to understand, Jesus knew this path must be walked, no matter how painful. As the disciples began to wonder aloud, who could it be? Their minds raced. Their hearts could hardly believe it, yet the reality of the situation was becoming clearer. The betrayal had already been set in motion, and there was no turning back. Jesus didn't shy away from the truth. He embraced it, knowing that the events that would unfold in the coming hours were necessary for the salvation of humanity. But why did this betrayal have to happen? What did it mean for the disciples, who had followed Jesus so closely? And what about the world? The weight of this moment was heavy, not just for the disciples, but for all of mankind, as it signified the beginning of a larger plan that would change the course of history forever. Breaking the bread. What would you think if someone offered you a piece of bread and told you it was their body? Sounds strange, right? But that's exactly what Jesus did that night. As he broke the bread, he told his disciples, "This is my body, broken for you." It wasn't just a symbolic act. It was a powerful moment of prophecy. Jesus was not just offering food, he was offering his life. This act wasn't about just sharing a meal, but about giving himself entirely for their salvation. He asked his disciples to eat it in remembrance of him, signifying the bond they shared. In doing so, Jesus was marking the beginning of something new, the new covenant, where his body would be the sacrifice for humanity's sins. The cup of the new covenant. Can you imagine holding a cup that represents the blood of someone you love, knowing it will be spilled for you? Jesus did just that when he held the cup of wine and said, "This is my blood, which is poured out for many." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. This was no ordinary drink. This cup represented his blood, shed for the forgiveness of sins. It was the fulfillment of a promise made long ago, God's promise of salvation. But it also marked a turning point for the disciples. They had just learned that betrayal was near, and now they were learning the full scope of Jesus' sacrifice. His blood would soon be shed, and they were to remember this moment for the rest of their lives. A moment of deep emotion. Have you ever felt a deep, overwhelming love for someone, so much that you would do anything for them? Jesus felt that love for his disciples, and he showed it in the most humble way possible. As he shared his final meal with them, he got down on his knees and washed their feet. This act of humility and love stunned the disciples. Why would their Lord, their teacher, stoop to such a lowly act? Jesus showed them that true leadership isn't about being served, but about serving others. He was teaching them a lesson in humility and love, two qualities that would define their mission after he was gone. This was a moment that would change the disciples forever, a moment that would set the stage for their future ministry. The betrayer revealed. The tension was thick in the air when Jesus finally revealed the betrayer. Imagine sitting at that table, your heart racing, as Jesus says, "The one who dips his hand with me in the bowl will betray me." Judas knew it was him, but the other disciples were in disbelief. They couldn't imagine one of their own betraying their teacher, their friend. Judas had been with them from the beginning, yet his actions would soon lead to Jesus' arrest. As Jesus told Judas to do what he had to do, the disciples were left stunned and confused. This was not just a betrayal. It was a pivotal moment that would lead to the crucifixion. Jesus knew exactly what was happening, and he accepted it. But why did he allow this betrayal to happen? And what does this teach us about loyalty and trust? Jesus' final instructions. What would you say to someone you love if you knew it was the last time you'd see them? Jesus, knowing his time on earth was coming to a close, gave his disciples final instructions that would carry them through the toughest times ahead. He told them to trust in God, love one another, and remain strong in their faith. He wasn't just offering words of comfort, he was preparing them for what was to come. Jesus knew they would face persecution, challenges, and doubts, but he reassured them that the Holy Spirit would guide them. His instructions were clear. They were to continue his work, spread his message, and love as he had loved them. It was the final lesson before his departure. The new commandment. If you could sum up everything Jesus taught in one command, what would it be? For Jesus, the answer was simple: love one another. His new commandment was not just a nice sentiment, it was the foundation of everything he had taught his disciples. Jesus had shown them what true love looked like, a sacrificial love that put others first. And now, he was calling them to do the same. This love wasn't just about feeling good about others. It was about showing them through actions. It was a love that would change the world. As Jesus spoke these words, he wasn't just giving them a command. He was challenging them to live out his love every day. The departure and the promise of the Holy Spirit. What would you feel if you were told that your mentor, your guide, was leaving, and that you'd have to carry on the work alone? The disciples felt this way when Jesus told them he would be leaving them soon. But instead of leaving them in despair, he promised them the Holy Spirit, an advocate who would guide, teach, and empower them. This promise gave them hope in the face of fear. They knew that though Jesus was leaving, he wasn't abandoning them. The Holy Spirit would be their constant companion, empowering them to continue his mission. Jesus' departure wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new era for the disciples and for all believers. The Last Supper was more than just a meal. It was a moment that changed everything. It marked the beginning of a new covenant, a new way of relating to God, and a new mission for the disciples. The teachings and actions of Jesus that night were meant to prepare them for the challenges ahead, to equip them with the tools they needed to spread his message of love, sacrifice, and redemption. As we reflect on the Last Supper, we are reminded of the depth of God's love and the call to live out that love in our own lives. If you found this story meaningful, be sure to subscribe to Story of Grace for more powerful insights into the Bible. Together, we'll explore the depth of God's love and the lessons we can learn from His Word.